They thought it was just another family, tourists, strangers, easy targets, until the officers stepped in and crossed a line they would soon regret. The cuffs clicked shut, the children cried. The mother stood frozen, caught between fear and fury. But what no one at that luxury resort knew was who the father really was. He wasn't just a man. He wasn't just a guest. He was someone with the power to turn the entire system upside down. And as the truth slowly came to light, everything changed for the officers, for the resort, and for the entire city. Stay until the end to see how one father's true identity ignited a fight for justice that left everyone speechless. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and share your thoughts in the comments. Where are you watching from? Now let's dive into this powerful and real story. The sun was setting gently over the coastline, casting golden streaks across the turquoise waves. The Parker family had planned this getaway for months, a rare opportunity for them to breathe, to be together. No emergency calls, no late night meetings, no courtroom drama, just peace. Ethan Parker lay back on a poolside lounger, his sunglasses shielding his tired eyes. Years of working as a federal agent had worn him down, layer by layer. His wife, Lena, sat beside him with her legs crossed, fully immersed in the novel she hadn't had time to finish for weeks. Their children, Jackson 12 and Emily 7, splashed happily in the pool, their innocent laughter filling the air like music. But as the waves gently lapped against the shore, another storm, one far more dangerous, was brewing. Just beyond their sight, from the distance, two figures approached. They wore black polo shirts with gold-embroidered letters, security. Their faces carried a tightness that didn't match the easygoing luxury vibe of the resort. The lead guard, a man in his early 40s with a square jaw and cold eyes, whispered something to his younger partner. Both sets of eyes locked onto the Parker family. Ethan noticed them before they reached his chair. Years of instinct, never fully turned off, even on vacation. As they closed in, Lena lowered her book, sensing the shift in energy. "Excuse me, sir," the older guard said flatly. "I need to verify your reservation." Ethan remained calm, his voice steady. "We're in room 305. We checked in yesterday afternoon." Lena arched an eyebrow, her tone polite but clipped. "Is there a problem?" The guard's face barely shifted. "Just routine, ma'am. We've had situations. The word hung in the air like poison. "Would you like me to call the front desk myself?" Ethan offered, still maintaining his calm. "That won't be necessary," the younger guard interjected. "We'll handle it." The two guards stepped aside for a moment, speaking into their radios. But they never took their eyes off Ethan, off his wife, off his children. Lena's jaw tightened. She knew exactly what was happening. She had seen it before, too many times. Her legal mind calculated every unspoken implication, every biased assumption. Minutes later, the guards returned, but this time they weren't alone. Two uniformed police officers now flanked them. The officer in charge was a young man, barely in his 30s, his face flushed with the kind of authority that feeds off escalation. His hand hovered near his belt, dangerously close to his handcuffs. "Sir, we've received a call about a suspicious situation. I need to see your identification." Ethan sat up straighter. "I've already provided my room number to security. I'm not asking for your room number, sir. I'm asking for your ID." Lena's voice sliced through the growing tension. "My husband has done nothing wrong. You are harassing our family without cause." The officer ignored her, his eyes locked on Ethan. "Identification, now." Slowly, deliberately, Ethan reached into his wallet and produced his badge. The golden emblem of the Federal Bureau of Investigation gleamed under the setting sun. The officer stared at it, but showed no reaction. "I don't care what badge you flash," he said coldly. "We need real ID. Hand it over." Lena gasped. "He's a federal agent." The officer stepped closer, his tone lowering into a thinly veiled threat. Last chance. The children stood frozen, wide-eyed. Jackson's lip trembled as he whispered, "Dad?" Ethan looked at his son, then his daughter, then Lena, all witnessing something they should never have to see. And in that moment, as his heart burned and his mind calculated, Ethan knew they didn't know who they were dealing with. But they would. The tension thickened like a storm cloud settling over the luxury resort. As the Parker family stood their ground, the whispers from onlookers swirled, their phones still raised, capturing every second of the unfolding injustice. Ethan kept his composure, but inside a storm brewed. Lena, standing beside him, was radiating fury. She glanced at the police officers who had arrived moments earlier, their faces stern but uncertain. They seemed more concerned with asserting authority than actually understanding what was happening. "Sir, I need you to step aside and let us handle this," one of the officers said, stepping closer to Ethan, his hand resting near his holstered weapon. A silent but chilling threat. Ethan met his gaze calmly. "I've already explained, officer. My family and I are guests here. Room 305. You can verify that with the front desk. My identification has been provided." The officer narrowed his eyes, as if Ethan's calm only irritated him further. "We're not here to negotiate, sir. We received a report, and we're following protocol." Lena stepped forward, her voice like sharpened steel. "Protocol? Your protocol includes humiliating my husband in front of our children? Your protocol includes treating us like criminals while we're on vacation?" The younger officer, bolder and clearly less experienced, interrupted. "Ma'am, calm down. If you don't cooperate, you'll be interfering with the police investigation." Lena's eyes blazed. "And if you continue this abuse of power, you'll be facing a lawsuit. That'll ruin your career." Jackson and Emily clung tightly to each other behind their mother, their innocent eyes wide, trying to process the chaos erupting around them. Jackson whispered, "Dad, why is this happening?" Ethan heard the tremor in his son's voice and felt his heart sink. He crouched down, whispering softly, "It's going to be okay, buddy. Stay strong." The hotel manager finally appeared, rushing to the scene after witnessing the commotion escalate from a distance. His face pale, sweat beading on his forehead, he tried to inject some reason into the situation. "There's been a misunderstanding," he stammered. "Mr. Parker is indeed a guest." But his attempt at de-escalation came too late. The young officer barked sharply, cutting off the manager. "Enough! We're taking him in for questioning." The officer reached for his cuffs. That's when Ethan did something that froze the entire scene. In one smooth motion, he reached into his pocket, not aggressively, but with practiced ease, and pulled out his FBI credentials, flipping them open right in the officer's face. Special Agent Ethan Parker, Federal Bureau of Investigation. The resort fell into absolute silence. For a full beat, no one moved. The younger officer's hand hovered, midair, just inches from Ethan's wrist. The bold arrogance that had driven him moments earlier drained from his face as the weight of his mistake settled in. Even the older officer froze, his breath catching. The hotel manager gasped audibly. And then, Lena's voice sliced through the air, sharp and unrelenting. "Now, who's under investigation?" The silence hung heavy, as if even the wind dared not move. The younger officer, whose arrogance had fueled the entire confrontation, stared at Ethan's badge like it was a weapon he hadn't seen coming. His confidence cracked, replaced by a look of growing dread. Lena, standing tall beside her husband, refused to let the moment pass quietly. "You've just handcuffed a federal agent in front of his wife and children without any cause. I hope you fully understand the gravity of what you've done." Her voice wasn't shouting. It was low, controlled, and far more terrifying than if she had screamed. It was the voice of someone who smelled the blood in the water. The older officer finally found his voice, his tone trembling as he addressed Ethan. "Sir, we weren't aware. If you would have identified yourself earlier, Ethan cut him off without raising his voice. I did. More than once. The weight of those words crashed over the entire resort like a wave. The onlookers, previously silent, began murmuring louder now. They were no longer simply curious spectators, they were witnesses. Phones that had once recorded quietly were now aimed directly at the police officers. Some guests whispered in disbelief, others shook their heads, and a few openly voiced their disgust. This is outrageous, someone muttered. Unbelievable. I can't believe I'm seeing this, said another. The younger officer's face flushed red, his bravado completely shattered. His hands slowly dropped away from his cuffs, fingers twitching nervously. I want your badge numbers, Lena said firmly, her eyes locked on both officers. Right now. The older officer hesitated before complying, reaching into his vest pocket and pulling out a notepad, scribbling quickly. The younger one followed suit, though his hands shook slightly as he wrote. Meanwhile, the resort manager stood off to the side, fidgeting, wiping sweat from his brow, wishing desperately that he could disappear. I expect full names as well, Lena continued, and I strongly suggest you both retain legal counsel. Jackson, who had been holding his sister protectively, whispered to his father. Dad, you're not going to jail. Ethan finally allowed himself a small smile. No, son, they are. He gently rested his hand on Jackson's shoulder, trying to soothe the boy's shaken nerves. Then, from the distance, another voice entered the scene. Steady, authoritative, cutting clean through the thick tension. What exactly is going on here? The crowd parted as Deputy Chief Paulson arrived on the scene, flanked by two high-ranking officers. His sharp eyes scanned the situation, immediately locking on the handcuffs still dangling from one officer's belt. The young officer paled. Paulson's voice dropped into a chilling calm. Uncuff him. He's already been released, sir, the older officer stammered. Paulson's gaze swept over the Parker family, taking in the shaken children, the outraged mother, and Ethan standing tall, badge still in hand. And then his eyes narrowed. Oh, Agent Parker. His tone shifted as he fully processed the weight of the disaster unfolding in front of him. This just became a very serious problem. Deputy Chief Paulson exhaled slowly, his jaw tightening as he absorbed the gravity of the scene. For years, he had climbed the ranks, navigating the politics of law enforcement. But what stood before him now wasn't a minor incident. It was a powder keg. The crowd had fully encircled the area. Tourists in swimwear stood shoulder to shoulder, with staff members, all whispering with wide eyes. Dozens of phones remained raised, recording every breath, every word, every facial expression. Paulson's voice cut sharply through the murmurs. Who authorized this detainment? The older officer, suddenly very small in the shadow of his superior, swallowed hard. Sir, the protocol required verification of identity. We didn't intend what? Paulson interrupted coldly. Didn't intend to handcuff a federal agent? Didn't intend to traumatize his children? Or didn't intend to turn this resort into a national headline? The younger officer remained frozen, staring at the ground. His earlier arrogance had completely evaporated. Paulson turned his gaze to Ethan, his tone shifting, now layered with respect and unease. Agent Parker, I want to offer my personal apologies. What happened here is inexcusable. Ethan's expression remained steady, controlled. His years of experience as an agent allowed him to speak with calculated calm, though the fury within him still simmered just beneath the surface. Deputy Chief, your apology isn't for me. It's for my wife, my children, and every person who's been targeted like this without a badge to defend them. Paulson nodded, unable to argue. Understood. Lena stepped forward, her voice sharp and deliberate, every word slicing. Through the tension like a razor, an apology isn't enough. This is not going to disappear behind internal memos and sensitivity training. You've humiliated my husband. You've terrorized my children. You've profiled my entire family, publicly. Her eyes briefly swept across the crowd, speaking loud enough for everyone to hear. This is going to court and to the press. The murmurs from the crowd swelled again, as if her words had granted them permission to openly voice their disapproval. She's right. This is disgusting. They can't get away with this. Deputy Chief Paulson turned briefly to the resort manager, who now looked like he wanted to melt into the floor. "Mr. Dalton," Paulson said sharply, "prepare your legal counsel. You're not leaving this clean either." Dalton opened his mouth, but nothing came out except a shallow, helpless breath. His previously rehearsed lines about policy and guest safety had disintegrated in the face of the growing scandal. Paulson then turned to his own officers. "Effective immediately. Both of you are suspended pending a full investigation." The older officer nodded in resigned shame. The younger one finally lifted his head, his face pale, realizing for the first time the full scope of the damage. "But, sir, no buts." Paulson's voice was a steel door slamming shut. "Internal affairs will handle your statements. You'll receive formal notice by end of day." The younger officer's breath hitched, his bravado shattered. Ethan gently reached for Lena's hand, gripping it tightly. Their children stood close, clinging to their parents. "This isn't over," Lena whispered to her husband. Ethan squeezed her hand. "No, this is just beginning." And with that, the Parker family stood tall, side by side, facing the cameras, the crowd, and the storm that was about to erupt far beyond this resort. By the time the Parker family returned to their hotel suite that evening, the entire atmosphere of their vacation had collapsed into something unrecognizable. Lena sat on the edge of the bed, her phone vibrating non-stop as texts, emails, and calls flooded in. The footage captured by bystanders had already begun circulating on social media. Clips of Ethan being handcuffed, Lena's fierce confrontation, and Paulson's public suspension of the officers had gone viral within hours. The hashtags were spreading, profiling at the resort, FBI family, targeted justice for the Parkers. News anchors were already dissecting the footage on national broadcasts. This is yet another example of systemic bias in law enforcement. One legal analyst declared on a primetime talk show, an FBI agent treated like a criminal in front of his children. This isn't just an incident. It's a mirror held up to our justice system. Jackson sat silently on the couch, his wide eyes fixed on the TV, trying to make sense of seeing his parents' faces plastered across the country. Emily curled beside Lena, too young to grasp the full weight of what was unfolding, but sensing enough to cling tightly to her mother's arm. Ethan paced slowly across the suite, his hands behind his back, his mind racing not with fear, but with preparation. The experience of years spent investigating civil rights violations had taught him that power didn't rest in emotion, but in facts, in strategy. "This is moving faster than I expected," Lena said, breaking the heavy silence. "It was bound to," Ethan replied calmly. "The public's watching now, and that changes everything." He paused and turned to his wife. "But you know what happens next?" Lena nodded grimly. "The resort's lawyers will call. The department's PR team will try to spin it. They'll offer settlements, beg for silence, try to protect their image." Ethan exhaled, his eyes hardening. "Not this time." At that moment, Lena's phone rang. She recognized the number instantly, her senior partner from the law firm, Angela Monroe, one of the most prominent civil rights attorneys in the state. Lena answered. "Angela." "I saw the footage." Angela's voice was sharp, but steady. "I don't need to ask if you're ready to fight this. The question is how far you're willing to take it." Lena glanced at Ethan, who nodded. "We take it all the way." Angela didn't hesitate. "Good. Then here's what you need to know. The State Attorney General's office is already under pressure to investigate. Civil rights organizations are reaching out, and I've just been informed that several major networks want you on air by morning." Lena blinked, absorbing the rapid escalation. "That fast? This story isn't just about you anymore," Angela said. "You're the face of something much bigger now." Ethan approached, gently taking the phone from Lena's hand. "Angela," he said firmly, "we won't back down. Not for us. For everyone who never had the privilege of a camera to record what happened to them." Angela's voice softened, slightly. "Then buckle up, Agent Parker, because this is going national." As the call ended, the weight of what was coming fully settled over the room. The family exchanged glances, silently preparing themselves. The fight was no longer private. Now the entire nation was watching. By the next morning, the Parker family's quiet vacation had transformed into a full-blown media firestorm. Reporters camped outside the resort's gates. Satellite trucks lined the road like vultures circling a fresh headline. Cameras zoomed in on every window of the hotel, hoping to catch even a glimpse of the family at the center of the storm. Inside the suite, Lena scrolled through the endless stream of coverage. News anchors debated their case on every major network. Legal analysts dissected every second of the cell phone videos. Public opinion was rapidly dividing. Many supported the Parkers' fight for justice, while others tried to defend the officers, fueling online debates that raged like wildfire. Jackson sat at the breakfast table, fidgeting nervously, while Emily quietly clung to a stuffed bunny, her wide eyes still heavy from everything she had witnessed. Ethan, as always, remained calm, at least on the outside. Years of FBI training had taught him how to mask his inner fury, but even he could feel the pressure closing in. The doorbell rang sharply. It was Angela Monroe. Her arrival carried the weight of what was about to unfold. Dressed in a sleek navy suit, folders clutched under her arm, Angela's expression was as unflinching as Lena's courtroom stare. "We don't have much time," she said, stepping inside. "The state's Attorney General just announced a formal civil rights investigation. The governor's office issued a statement condemning the incident, and Horizon News has offered a prime-time interview slot tonight." Lena's jaw tightened. "They want a statement." "They want a symbol," Angela corrected. "Your family isn't just fighting for itself anymore. You've become a national emblem of systemic failure, and both sides know it." Angela handed over a thick folder, filled with preliminary documents, civil rights attorneys, national advocacy groups, petitions already circling online, lawmakers weighing in. "This will be the biggest case I've ever handled, Lena," she said softly, "and possibly the most dangerous." Ethan finally spoke, his voice like steel beneath the surface. "Dangerous for whom?" Angela didn't hesitate. "For the department, for the resort, for anyone who tries to bury this." At that moment, Ethan's phone buzzed. The name on the screen sent a chill down his spine. Deputy Director Ashton, FBI headquarters. Lena immediately noticed his reaction. Ethan excused himself and stepped onto the balcony, answering the call. Director Ashton. The voice on the other end was cool, measured. The voice of someone calculating political fallout. "Ethan," Ashton began, "you've served this agency honorably for years, but you're now at the center of something that could get far uglier." "I know. There are people in Washington watching this very closely, higher than you or me, people who would prefer this situation de-escalate." Ethan's jaw tensed. "And how do they suggest I do that?" "A public statement. Reaffirm your confidence in law enforcement. Downplay the racial angle. Help stabilize the situation before it spirals." Ethan exhaled sharply, his rage simmering beneath every word. "You want me to betray my family, my children?" "No one's saying that," Ashton replied smoothly. "But if you go too far, "Ethan, you may find yourself isolated." There was a long pause as the wind blew across the balcony, rustling Ethan's shirt. "Sir," Ethan finally said, his voice low but unshakable, "I've worn this badge with honor for 15 years. But if protecting my badge means abandoning my family or anyone else who's ever faced this, then I no longer deserve to wear it." He ended the call without waiting for a reply. When Ethan re-entered the suite, Lena and Angela were waiting, reading his face instantly. "They're trying to silence us, aren't they?" Lena asked quietly. "They're scared," Ethan confirmed, "which means we're exactly where we need to be." Angela allowed herself a small smile. "Then let's give them something real to fear." The battle was no longer just personal. Now, the full weight of institutions, law enforcement, politics and public opinion was crashing together, and the Parkers stood at the center. By the time night fell, the Parker family wasn't just a trending topic. They had become the lead headline across every major news outlet in the country. The resort had entered full damage control mode, releasing carefully worded statements about miscommunication and unfortunate misunderstandings. But the public wasn't buying it. The footage spoke louder than any press release. That evening, inside the bright studios of Horizon News, Lena and Ethan sat opposite a respected journalist. Bright lights, cameras, microphones, the entire nation was about to watch. "Mr. and Mrs. Parker," the interviewer began solemnly, "millions of Americans have now seen the footage. Your family's experience has sparked outrage and debate nationwide. What do you hope comes from this?" Ethan answered first, his voice calm but heavy with conviction. "I've spent my entire career serving my country. As an FBI agent, I've sworn to uphold the law, to protect people, all people. But what happened to us wasn't about law. It was about prejudice. It was about my children witnessing their father being treated like a criminal because of the color of our skin." Lena leaned forward, her eyes burning with quiet fire. "We're here not just for our family," she said firmly. "We're here for every black family that's been humiliated, dismissed, or endangered for simply existing. This isn't isolated. This is systemic. And we will fight until real change happens." The journalist nodded solemnly. "Some have called your family brave. Others accuse you of exploiting the situation for attention." Lena didn't flinch. "Let them call it what they want. We didn't ask for this fight, but we won't back down from it." As the interview broadcasted live, Twitter exploded with support. Celebrities, politicians, civil rights groups, all rallying behind the Parkers. The pressure reached every level of government. By the next morning, the resort's board of directors announced the termination of multiple security staff involved. The city mayor held an emergency press conference, promising full accountability for the officers. But the most shocking development came later that afternoon. Deputy Chief Paulson was suspended indefinitely. The police department's internal affairs unit had uncovered a trail of discriminatory complaints stretching back years, not just against the younger officers, but under Paulson's supervision itself. Lawsuits began to multiply. Suddenly, those who had tried to bury the Parkers' story were drowning in it. Inside their home, Angela Monroe arrived again, but this time with good news. "We've received word from the Justice Department," she announced, placing a thick file on the table. "Federal civil rights charges are being prepared against multiple officers and the resort. The FBI has also opened a parallel investigation into systemic misconduct within the local department." Ethan let out a slow breath, both relieved and overwhelmed by the speed of the developments. "They're finally forced to act," Lena whispered. Angela nodded. "Your case has become bigger than all of us. It's now being used as a model for a national investigation into discriminatory practices." Suddenly, Ethan's phone rang again, but this time it was a different number, one he didn't expect. The director of the FBI. Ethan hesitated, then answered. "Agent Parker." The director's voice came through calmly, but with gravity. I want to personally apologize for what you and your family endured. The Bureau fully supports your pursuit of justice, and if you choose, your voice may be needed to help guide the changes that follow. Ethan glanced at Lena, then at his children quietly playing in the living room, still too young to fully understand the storm that had consumed their world. He answered without hesitation, "Sir, I didn't ask for this fight. But now that we're here, I won't stay silent." As he hung up, Ethan turned to Lena. His voice was steady, but now filled with something stronger than rage. Purpose. We started this for us. Now we finish it for everyone else. The battle that began at the poolside had become a national reckoning, but the Parkers were no longer victims. They were leading the charge. Months passed. What began as a horrifying moment by a resort pool had now ignited one of the most significant civil rights conversations in years. Congressional hearings were held. National media continued to follow the Parker case relentlessly. Protesters gathered peacefully outside police departments, holding signs that read, "I am Ethan Parker." The Parker name had become more than a headline. It had become a symbol. Inside a large conference hall in Washington, D.C., hundreds had gathered for a national forum on police accountability and racial justice. Ethan and Lena were invited as keynote speakers. As the spotlight hit the stage, Ethan stood beside his wife, looking out into the vast crowd. Law enforcement officers, lawmakers, activists, students, and everyday citizens all gathered. Because of what had started with his family, he took a deep breath, gripping the podium. "My name is Ethan Parker," he began. "I am a husband, a father, a federal agent. And like too many black fathers before me, I was handcuffed in front of my own children, not for a crime, but for existing." The room was silent. Every word carried the weight of experience, pain, but also clarity. My family went on vacation, for peace. Instead, my son and daughter witnessed their father treated as less than human, not because of what I'd done, but because of what I looked like. That is not just my story. That is the story of millions of black Americans who walk through life fearing the very system meant to protect them. He paused, letting the emotion fill the space. "But today I stand here not as a victim, but as a voice." Lena stepped forward, her tone fierce but warm. "We are not here to condemn. We are here to demand better. Real justice is not vengeance. It's reform, it's accountability, it's ensuring that no child watches their parent be degraded because of ignorance and hate." The applause grew louder, building like a wave. Ethan continued, his voice unwavering. "Our children, Jackson, Emily, they carry the scars of that day, but they also carry our strength. They watched their parents fight back. And because of that, they now know when injustice rises, you do not lower your head. You stand." The entire room stood with them, the ovation thunderous. Cameras flashed, journalists wiped away tears. But Ethan didn't smile. He simply whispered to himself, "This isn't the end." Weeks later, as life slowly returned to its rhythm, Ethan sat on the back porch of their home watching the sun set. Jackson came out quietly, sitting beside him. "Dad?" Jackson asked softly. "Are you still angry?" Ethan looked down at his son, placing a firm hand on his shoulder. "I'm not angry anymore, son," he said. "I'm focused. Because we fought back, and because you watched, you learned how to fight for what's right." Jackson nodded thoughtfully. "Do you think it will ever happen to me?" The question hit Ethan like a quiet blade. He looked at his son with honesty. "I hope not, son, but if it does, you'll know how to stand." As the sun dipped below the horizon, father and son sat in silence, not of fear, but of resilience. The battle wasn't over, but the Parker family had changed the landscape forever. Their story would now live on, as a symbol of how love, courage, and truth can stand taller than any injustice.